Hey guys, Kate here from KegLand and talking about our Benchy carbonated units. These are the Benchy Sparklings, which do carbonated and chilled water, so they do both at the same time. They've got a refrigerated compressor in the back here, so they don't require the use of another fridge. You just plumb mains water and mains CO2 supply into the back of the machine, and then you've got cold and carbonated water coming out the front. Now these particular units, or the whole Benchy range for that matter, is designed to be nice enough that you can put them on top of the bench top and you can have the taps mounted directly to the unit. So with this particular unit, you can pop out these black caps. The taps are sold separately. I would recommend the NukaTap FC taps because of the flow control. It's particularly handy. You're using fairly high pressures with carbonated water, so the flow control is definitely one of those taps that I'd recommend in this particular application. And then you can mount them to the front of the unit like this. So that's sort of the easy installation, you might say. But a lot of people are buying this unit because they want to have a really sort of sleek design, and you might want to mount it under counter as well. And today I'm going to show you how we do that installation. Because these are a fully self-enclosed carbonator unit, you just need the mains water and CO2 in the back, and obviously because it's got a compressor in here, you have to make sure there's a little bit of ventilation on the side, but otherwise it's a standalone unit. So if you guys want a more complex installation, you've already got a fridge that you don't mind drilling holes into, you can also see the other video I've got, which is the carbonation reactor lid. So that's one that sits on top of a keg. So if you want to plumb a keg into your fridge and plumb mains water into that, that's a much cheaper option. However, if you don't want to make holes in your fridge at all or your kegerator, and you really want a standalone unit like this with all the refrigeration and carbonation done in this unit, then this is definitely the installation for you. This will suit definitely anybody who's spending a bit of money on their own house and wants a really nice kitchen, want to have carbonated water made into the bench top, want to get rid of that, cumbersome soda stream machine which is taking up bench space, and don't want that hassle of putting chilled water bottles in the fridge. I think having one of these units is also fantastic for a cafe or restaurant where, you're going through that hustle and bustle. You don't want to be throwing out a whole lot of plastic bottles, and, you just want it to be able to keep up with a reasonable pace. A unit like this will be able to carbonate and dispense about 30 litres per hour roughly, so its capacity is definitely right up there. It also gives you a wide range of carbonation level, which is another difference. So with some of the other carbonators out there, they're more or less fixed and you don't have a lot of ability to change that carbonation level, but this can go to a very lightly carbonated and right up to an extremely high carbonation, so over 4 volumes that is. So normally that's even more carbonated than most soda waters that you buy from the supermarket in a bottle. The other thing is it's kind of efficient, more efficient than using soda stream machines, because when you're carbonating the water, you're only pouring the glass that you need, and there's not a wastage in the because it's a closed carbonator unit. You're not wasting gas. So when you've got a soda stream machine, pushing that button and carbonating, some of that CO2 is blowing out to atmosphere, which is what makes that sort of farting sound, I guess. And the other thing is every time you open the bottle and you hear that shh sound, that is gas just going to atmosphere, which is not in the water where you want it to be. So, they are a very efficient unit, and although they are a little bit more complex to set up, they're definitely well worth the money in the long run. Anyway, let's get into the installation and I'll show you how easy it is to put one of these under your counter and mount them into like a domestic type of sink. So for this type of installation, you certainly can use standard beer taps, and we sell obviously lots of those, being KegLand. So if you're putting it into a bar or something like that and you want that bar look, certainly go ahead and do that. However, we do now stock some of these little RO water taps, and this particular one has 2 different taps on it. So I'm going to use one for sparkling and one for still chilled water. So I kind of think these are probably more discreet and they're a little bit more compact, so they kind of fit like a domestic installation like this, where I just don't want to make the taps a big feature, I guess. The other thing is, because we're using the 1/4-inch line, there's lots and lots of other taps that are out there you can use as well. So if you don't like our tap selection, for instance, you can easily purchase just any RO water tap from your tap supplier or plumbing store or whatever, and you can get a black tap or rose gold or whatever it is you're after. But one thing to look for is try to find ones where they've got the 1/4-inch push-in on the base. That way you can use these fittings to easily plumb it up, and they just push straight on like that, making the installation really straightforward. So if I'm going to install this into my tap, the first thing is to drill a couple of holes here so I can get the tap installed. Now, the trick with drilling stainless is to make sure you go really slow and use a lot of pressure, because as soon as I start drilling fast, the bit heats up and you end up, losing all that tempering on the high-speed steel. The steel becomes soft and the surface you're drilling becomes even harder. So, yeah, go really slow and push fairly firmly. So, I'm just going to mark this out like this because I want the tap to go here. One nice thing about installing a tap like this into a sink is obviously I know I've got a mains water supply just underneath, so I don't have to run any mains water in. I've already got it. The other thing is I don't have to worry about a drip tray. So this tap is going to sit here and just hang into this little side sink here. And that way I can push this out when I'm not using it, but when I am using it, I don't have to clean any drip trays out or worry about that part of the installation either. So yeah, when I'm just drilling this hole, pushing really firmly, I'm just using one of these step drill bits. I find these step drill bits do a great job of doing a nice clean hole, especially for small holes like this. I think they're great. There we go. Now, one thing you also want to do, if you're starting to go through fairly thick stainless, highly recommend making sure you use a bit of lubricant. The lubricant will basically make the drill bit last a lot longer and it'll give you a much cleaner, better hole. As soon as these bits heat up, you're going to destroy them. Okay, great. So that's those holes done. I'm just going to use this little gasket. Then I'm going to use this little dust cover and do up the nuts from underneath. Now, this particular bench is actually quite narrow. It's only 450 millimeter deep because that's just this racking that I had lying around the place to do this sample video. But you guys probably will have a little bit more space than this, given that most under sink areas are 650 millimeter deep. So underneath the counter here, you're going to need obviously a power supply and you're going to need a water supply. Now with the water supply, pretty much no matter where you are, you're going to have a 1/2 inch outlet. Now this actually is just a Braziller tap, but they're all pretty much the same with regards to the outlet thread. So because it's a 1/2 inch, I'm going to undo this. So this is the line, the cold water line, which is leading up to go to my cold water tap on the sink. Take that off, just get this diverter. So basically this is a 1/2 inch female to male, and then I've got the 1/4 inch push in. So I screw that on this side. So I'm essentially just teeing off and taking off that water supply. It is kind of nice to have a diverter valve which has also the ability to turn the flow off, just in case you wanted to disconnect this unit or something like that. And then connect back your standard water supply on the base like this. Now, because all of these fittings, you'll notice actually, all of these fittings generally will have a rubber seal in here. There's no need to use Teflon tape on these types of fittings. So these braided hoses which you buy from the hardware store almost always have that seal already in there. That does make the installation even easier. So I just screw that on place, make sure both of these are quite firm. I'd give them a little nick up with a spanner as well, another 1/2 turn or so. Then what I'll do is I'll get this water supply line. So I get this guy here. Now I'm just taking it out of my mains water tap. Some of you guys might find that you need to filter your water. If you're in a part of Australia like Adelaide or something and the water's not really fantastic, you may want to run it through an RO system before you run into this machine. Or you might have tank water, for instance, you might want it through a filter. Or if you've got very low water pressure, the other thing you might want to consider is getting a diaphragm pump to actually step it up, because these units will require a minimum pressure as well. So if you do have that problem, you can buy, for instance, one of the super sucker style pumps and just hook that into your mains water supply. So definitely if you're in Australia, it's no problem, because in Australia we have very, very high mains water pressure. However, if you're in another country, or let's say you've got tank water and your tank water is just gravity feeding into the house, you may want to consider using something to lift the pressure up. Anyway, I'll jam this in here for my water supply. Chop the hosing, so just use this hose cutter because you want to get a nice clean cut on the tubing. And then this will go into the machine like so. Now you can actually move these inputs and outputs if you want to. This particular one has the water inlet on the right hand side. However, you can actually configure this and undo this and put it into one of these other holes and switch them around if you like. They don't necessarily have to be set up, just you can change them over to your particular configuration. The next thing I'm going to do is hook up the gas. I've got the gas inlet here. So I've got the gas hosing, once again, just a push-in fitting. Because we use all our regulators with 8mm output, the gas line itself is 8mm. So I just push that straight into there. And now I've got these two outlets, which is cold water and carbonated water. So I just get some tubing. So now I've got the supply water lines. I'm just using the Everbarrier 4mm ID by 8mm OD. So push these into the back of the machine. I've got the sparkling water and also the carbonated water. And then on the other side of these lines, because this is 8mm and I'm going into the 6.5mm, or the 1/4 inch basically, I need the 8mm or 5/16 to 1/4 inch reducing push-in fitting. So I've got those two there, and then these just push onto the back of the tap like so. With these types of fittings, make sure you push them in quite firmly, and you always want to do a pressure check. So when you've installed everything like this, make sure to turn the mains water on, have a look at all the fittings, make sure nothing's going to pull out or anything like that. With your CO2, it's also good to double check this one by turning it on, cranking the pressure up to a relatively high pressure, the maximum of what you think you're going to use, and then turn the gas cylinder handle off and then see if it maintains pressure. If you see the pressure's dropping fairly quickly, you know you've got some type of leak and you need some type of attention. But overall, the installation is really simple. It only takes a few minutes to install one of these units, and definitely, I think anybody at home can really do this themselves. Well, that is pretty much it. Now, the moment of truth. This particular unit has been turned on for a few hours, so it already should be starting to get quite carbonated now. The first time you turn it on, you'll notice that it actually gets quite a bit more carbonated in the first 24 hours. That's just the first time you turn it on, then it will be fine. It will recover really quickly after that, and it's got down to temperature. Here goes nothing. Ah, perfect. Now that is a beautifully and highly carbonated soda water. Oh, just how I like it. Spicy. Now, if you guys want to hear about any of the other cool new stuff that we're bringing out, such as the other two Benchy models that we've got for beer dispensing, then definitely subscribe now. Bottom right hand corner, hit the subscribe button. The other thing you can do is join the Facebook community group. We've got a lot of members like yourself out there sharing tips and tricks on how to use all the gear, so definitely sign up to that one. Just search KegLand Homebrew Community Group. It'll come up straight away. All right, thanks for that, fellas, and I'll see you next time. Bye.